listening to the Forest School podcast with Lewis Ames and Gemma Southerden.
Hello.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm okay. I'm a bit discombobulated, but I'm all right.
Are you also on we should say, let's place it in time. We're recording this on February 24th, 2021. We've been told 2 days ago. I would just tell you my favourite phrase was Boris Johnson, and he repeated it twice. The one-way road to freedom, which I love it. That is
hyperbole.
You know those albums that are like, now that's what I call dad rock?
Yeah.
You could sneak One Way Road to Freedom.
Definitely.
On that, I got a one-way road to freedom.
And just, I know. The roadmap. This is the roadmap. It is very dad. The whole thing is very dad. Have you got the roadmap out of COVID? Yeah, I got the roadmap.
Do you think it would have been better if he'd started the press conference with a dad move where you just go, right, and clap your hands and rub them together, and that tells everybody that it's time to leave wherever you are. You're from your chair in the corner of the room, you go, right, off we go then.
Yeah.
I'm knackered, mate. I went into the woods today with my kids, and I tell you what, we've got 2 weeks before we start running sessions again, and me and my kids are basically going to be on a 2-week reintroduction
training program.
I'm going to make them sit in the garden even if they're just watching TV. I'll point it up against the window and be like, we've got to toughen up again, come on.
And what about other people, other humans? You have to put loads of puppets around the place and kind of make them creepy puppets and make them talk and make the puppets move towards your children and maybe kind of ask them for stuff oh, I see you're playing with that toy, how about I have it? Just to prep them socially as well, social training with creepy puppets.
I feel like they'd be all right with that. I feel like maybe I will need it, but if I put each of the puppets on some sort of tape recorder loop so that I have to, when they give teenagers in schools, there's fake babies and it's it cries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get loads of those just so that I can mimic 15 kids going can you get the rope for me? Yes, I can get the rope. Can you do the thing? Yes, I can get the thing. Will you push me on the switch? Yes, I can push you on the just that level of
can we do some whittling? Actually, no. Can we do some firelighting? Actually, can we play a game? Let's play a game. What game should we play? Yeah, exactly. That kind of.
And we said, didn't we? They're so I say this for anybody listening, that one thing we are going to do proactively is that we are going to plan our first couple of sessions and send them as normally there's loads of free play. There will be loads of free play, but here is a guide of what's going to happen on the first day back or first couple of days back. Just because we found, didn't we, in the last coming out of the last lockdown, everyone wanted to do everything. It was so
we had a manic
chaotic.
2 weeks. It was crazy. It was crazy and completely understandably. They just needed so much support and scaffolding. So it's better to give them that proactively this time round. I think it's good.
I hope so. We'll check in 3 weeks' time where we go, well, that didn't work at all. But that's kind of one of the things, isn't it? It's what can you do to readjust or adjust your expectations or preempt certain needs and things that are going to be happening when you go back. It's going to be guessing.
But yes, it's the kind of adrenaline rush of stuff can open, and then I think you were saying that you felt the same, the crash of today of going, oh my god. I've been hyped up for 2 days, we do this, we do that, and when? Let me check the guidance on that. And then today just oh.
Do you know what it is? It's that thing, and people often refer to teaching and education in general as plate spinning, going touch that plate. You can't do that thing of focus just on one plate and spin because other stuff will fall down. And essentially what we've just tried to do is start 9 plates spinning at the same time, in that we're going right, we'll restart this part of our business and this part's going to have to kick in. And we need to communicate that, we just had a manic run.
But apart from that, fine. I've got loads of oak apples in my pocket. I've got
What's an oak apple? Because people in other countries might, or people who don't know. Tell us about.
Well, I think, surely they have them in every country. They're round like marbles made by oak trees, but made by gall wasps that lay their eggs in an oak bud, and then that amazingly convinces the oak tree to make this like woody marble. And then the little baby gall wasp grows inside and then hatches out by kind of drilling this little perfectly round hole in them. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 off of one tiny baby oak tree just now. And they're all like, can you hear them? You hear that?
I can hear that.
That's them rattling their
ASMR.
hands. And I'm gonna make some ink. This is probably about the 20th time I've collected some galls and gone, I'm definitely making ink this time, but this is the most I've had at one time, so I reckon it's worth it this time.
So what will you do? You smash them and then...
You smash them. Can you hear? You smash them and you mix them with some iron solution, so or like steel wool that you've put in some water, in some vinegar, and then ideally with some gum arabic as well to make it thicker and make it like bond to the paper. But I don't have any gum arabic. I don't know if it's something you can buy on eBay. I've just thrown them at my cat and see what she's going to do with them. Just sort of sniffing them.
Nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I do.
Touching in with the old skills.
Yeah. My gratitude thing has again, when we're back in the woods, I'm more than happy to start looking at it again and look at what I'm doing and doing whatever. But yeah, it's just completely fallen off. But I'm not beating myself up about it. I'm just kind of going, okay, that didn't work for a little bit. Like I said, when we talked about this, I'm perfectly confident, perfectly comfortable with the idea of starting a project in February or in March as I am and starting it in January. It's just, I mean, especially this year, time means absolutely nothing. So as far as I'm concerned, it was Christmas yesterday and tomorrow I'm going to work. It's basically what's happened to time.
Yep.
But we are about to chat with the guys from the Woodland Classroom all about foraging. So let's get into that, shall we?
Yeah.
Applications for Forest School training are now open at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
Okay.
Cool. We wanted to ask you how, so it's James, and is it Lee or Lea?
Yes.
Lee. Great. Glad we checked.
Yes,
we
don't
checked.
worry, many people mistake it for Lea, but they would be wrong. It means little meadow.
Yeah.
Oh, in what? In Welsh?
Oh, nice.
No, it's an old English word. She skipped over the Lee,
cool.
Which is like a poetry thing, but Lee means little meadow. Leslie means big meadow.
Ah.
So, yeah, it's an old English word.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I'm little. So, yeah, there we are.
Well, we'll jump straight in then. We're here to kind of pick your brains about all the things that you do, but particularly foraging. And that's kind of, is it fair to say foraging is a bit of a focus for you guys at the moment, or has it always been a focus? How's it kind of come about?
It has been. Foraging and trees is our biggest focus since lockdown. Foraging and trees, I'd say, the two biggest things. Because, of course, we haven't been running events. So it's been...
We've always done, since we've been working with adult groups and teaching them, as well as the kids stuff we've done, foraging courses have been a part of that program. But in the last year, it's really kind of skyrocketed for us. And we've just been doing a lot more of it as our skills have built and also the interest that people have had, especially through lockdown, with people wanting to access the green spaces and look at them in a different way. And, some people are, finding new footpaths in their area, discovering new green patches they've never been into before, and then looking at maybe trees to identify them, but also the plants that they could potentially eat or wildflowers they can identify. So it's one thing that I think people have been really, really interested in. And it's been a lot of fun. A lot of fun, yeah.
And taking it online has meant it's skyrocketed more so, just tenfold. It's been crazy. But we've survived because of it.
And how do you find as the...
Amazing.
Would you say doing it online has made you have to rethink how you approach the kind of teaching of it? Because obviously if you're teaching something like identifying a tree and you're next to the tree with a group, you can specifically point at stuff, but it's different, isn't it, when you've got to imagine what other people are seeing?
Yeah. Luckily, James's first degree was in media, and he was an assistant cameraman for a number of years. So he uses film as a medium, and that's been a massive help in helping people to see what we see when we're out and about. So if we can't actually be physically with people outside, then film is the next best thing.
But yeah, in terms of the teaching style, it's very visually based, isn't it? Because we can't use those other senses like touch and smell. I mean, with the forage foods, we can sometimes say you've got this smell like hawthorn. Oh, it smells of almonds, like marzipan, the blossom. You can describe that, but really they're not going to make that sensory link that they would do on a course out in the woods. So yes, there are limits teaching online. I think anyone who's doing any teaching delivery online would say, of course, there's limitations, but we do what we can with the medium we've got. So especially with the forage foods, we try to keep it plants and fungi that can be identified easily visually, not confused with anything else. You're not having to rely on other senses that maybe won't come across on a Zoom session.
Yeah. And are your videos available after the course for people to like rewatch, or is it kind of live? And
the webinars are available to our patrons. Or we've had people who couldn't make it and they've paid for a recording. However, which is all very exciting, we have launched the complete tree ID course, but we will be launching the complete Foraging Wild Year course.
It's got a name. It's called Your Wild Food Year.
Your Wild Food Year.
Someone's on the branding. Someone knows how to market.
So to answer the question, so basically we've now got this whole library almost of a year. So we've been doing it since May last year, and we had our first lockdown. So we'll almost have a whole 12-month library of foraging videos, resources, workshops that people could access for sure. Yeah.
Find out about CPD courses at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
Cool. So, because I was going to say that is a benefit, isn't it? As opposed to like a face-to-face course where you're there for a day and you're, immersed in the sensory experience of it all. And it's all brilliant and great and like kind of another world, isn't it? Away from your normal day-to-day life, and you're there foraging with some people who know what they're doing, which is great. But then sometimes there are elements of it that you forget, and you might have taken notes or taken a photograph, but being able to rewatch a video at your leisure just to check a detail or something is really beneficial. So that's kind of flip side, I guess, of doing online stuff based on film.
Commit a monetary amount to a course, and they use that knowledge and they want to get the most out of it, and they're almost being held accountable because you're in this group of students. They're going to go outside and look for these plants way more than if they just booked for a weekend course with us. I think that can really accelerate people's desire to go out more and more and try and identify those plants.
And it's a supplement, as Gemma says as well, to the actual outdoor learning. So yeah, it's a great follow-on, isn't it? And hopefully, whoever's running any outdoor education online is inspiring people who might not have accessed it before, who might have thought, I don't want to go out to the woods for a day, but might have now been inspired in whatever it is that they're teaching, whether it's tracking or how to identify different feathers that fall on the ground. I'm doing a workshop on that tonight as a student, all kinds of stuff, foraging. And then hopefully they've got the confidence now to go, you know what, I want to go on a course and hopefully access their local forest school or bushcraft trainer and find out what they can offer out in the woods once we're all out of lockdown. So I think it's been able to reach a lot more people that might not have gone on these kind of events before.
I can imagine that. I can imagine somebody maybe who hasn't done much bushcraft before or hasn't been on a course like that thinking, oh, I'd quite like to, but I bet they all kind of already know a bit what they're doing, and I maybe feel a bit like I didn't belong there. I've never done that kind of thing. Whereas kind of an online course is, a bit more accessible in that way for that kind of thing, perhaps. Yeah,
definitely. It's definitely one for beginners who perhaps lack confidence. Definitely.
And confidence is one of those things, isn't it? Actually, one of the things that we've talked about with other people we've interviewed, predominantly about fungi, but in foraging in general, is that kind of perception that foraging is very high risk, which it can be sometimes, but it can also be hugely beneficial. Have you guys come across anything where you're kind of bringing people in who are very hesitant or how do we meet that need with parents and teachers and things who are very kind of like, I've worked in schools where they've gone, the kids cannot eat anything, even with all your qualifications and all the, you can go, no, it's blackberries, it's blackberries, they're on the brambles, I know what they are. And the teachers go, we just can't take the risk, we can't let them eat blackberries. How do we talk to those teachers and those kind of adults?
Yeah, it's just about skilling them up so they feel confident with their own foraging, their own personal journey. And then how they deliver that to groups is up to them, because every school will be different, their policies will be different, and that red tape that they come up against. With us teaching the adults, we don't have to deal with that, because it can be so frustrating. I mean, we were in a school in Swansea and there's this huge cherry tree covering the forest school and sort of reception area, and all these fabulous cherries were all squished on the floor, and the kids were always told, stay away, don't touch, don't lick your fingers. We were there like, oh, these are really good, and the teachers were, oh, you can eat them, oh wow.
And that's a cherry.
Yeah, I don't think I've never.
Yeah,
of course, just a wild cherry, that most of us in adult education know is totally fine, But I'm not come across anyone say, no, you absolutely can't do this with basic foraging, but I can see how that could happen easily. But as forest school leaders, of course, we've got our risk assessment in place, and we're gauging the group. So we're going to start, as we get to know our group over sessions, we're going to gauge what level they're at, where the school's at, and we're going to start to lead them into the subject, whether it's foraging, whether it's sharp tool work. It's the same thing. You're starting small, and you're building up over time. So, hopefully your blackberries and your wild garlic, things that are safe and things that the kids can't misidentify when they go home, and so you want to give them confidence and nice, easy things. There's plenty of time to get more complex further down the road, but we want to give nice, easy wins with stuff that tastes good, of course. There's no good teaching them stuff that, maybe easy to identify, but doesn't actually taste any good, because kids are going to go off flavour, aren't they? And the experience, so that's what they want. So, blackberries, wild garlic, sweet chestnuts, those kind of things. Rose hips is a great one that kids love to squeeze and to get the juice out of, and it tastes like a tropical fruit. So, things like that, they're going to have a real good success with. And read your group and the school, really, and see where they're at and meet them.
I must say, Gemma, I don't know if I've told you this story before, and I won't say where it is for obvious reasons when the story carries on. But I was once with a group. This was when I was a teacher, and I went to like an outdoor education centre, and they split us all off into little groups, and me and my group went off with someone and it was just go off around, everybody do some foraging, we'll bring it all back, and we'll have this big, essentially potluck meal. It'll all go on pizzas or whatever. And my group went off with this very friendly chap, and he took us off, and we got some cow parsley, which is, like I say, not particularly tasty, but it was kind of like, it's there and you can eat it. And then brought it back, and the head guy was kind of doing a bit of an inspection of everything as it came past. And the bloke we'd been with had already said, oh, try this, kids. And they'd eaten a little bit, and then it went past, and the head guy just went, can I just check, you do know this isn't hemlock? And the guy went, could it be hemlock? Yeah, they look really similar. Wow. Oh, I didn't know about that. And I immediately turned around, the head guy turned around to me and went, have any of your kids eaten this? I was like, yeah, they ate loads of it. That guy told them it was fine. It was just, it's like.
Yeah, we stay away from cow parsley.
It's not worth
just
it.
For that reason. It's not worth it, not at all.
Yeah, there's certain plants which are not beginners plants, as that story demonstrates quite clearly there, doesn't it? Yeah, and also, Chinese whispers down, people talking about, plants that are safe and getting confused with other ones, it can happen. So we want to keep it nice and easy.
And in terms of fungi, we decided to stay away pretty much from fungi on our webinars, but we did do a whole webinar just on certain fungi, but we got the bloke who taught James bushcrafting, who's got years of experience, and there was lots of disclaimers, please take 2 or 3 ID books with you. But we chose, was it 4 or 5 different mushrooms that are pretty unique in terms of they're not going to be mistaken for anything too poisonous. But
it comes down to that thing that we're always trying to do with forest school sessions, which is we are trying to encourage people to take responsibility. The kids take responsibility for their learning, for their experience as well, and responsibility for what they discover, and that's really important. And for the teachers, that we work with too, they need to go out and put the time in to understand and know these plants. That's really important. And they will get the rewards because of that, because then they'll be able to pass good information on to whoever they're teaching as well. That's really important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we talked on our podcast the other day about yet another kind of new study about nature connectedness and the nature connectedness index among children. And one of the most interesting findings being that the biggest factor on how nature connected a child is having a nature connected adult in their life, which kind of has made us kind of think about the work that we do with adults even more already. And similar to what you guys are saying, kind of giving that knowledge to an adult so that they can impart it to a child, and how just really valuable that is. And I was wondering about you guys and your own background, and were you very nature connected as children, or where did your first kind of inspiration for ending up in the life you're living now come from?
I do, yeah, I think I did have a lot of time out in nature. My granddad was a science teacher, and he used to talk to me about the science of nature, and then my dad would just dig a hole in the garden and fill it with water and say, crack on, kids. And they used to have aviaries of birds, injured birds, my mum and dad did. I think during my 20s I definitely lost my nature connection now, and through my 30s I rediscovered it for sure. And working in mental health, I started, and alongside doing forest school, I started to make that deep connection that the two worked beautifully alongside one another. But yeah, what about you, James?
Yeah, with my upbringing, Sunday walks was a regular thing every Sunday, going out in the countryside. It was a nice kind of free, easy activity to do, whether it was to the local woods or up on a country path, wherever, and just enjoying nature. And I've always enjoyed that. Used to go to National Trust properties and explore them and run around the gardens, probably across flower beds we weren't supposed to, but it was just there as part of childhood. Yeah, I just really took to it, really. But again, like Lea, I think I lost a bit of that nature connection. It was always there. I could have gone two ways. When I was choosing college, I was either going to do environmental studies and geography and go down that route, which might have led to this kind of work sooner, who knows, or I was going to go down the media route. And I went down media, and I went and worked in film and TV for around 10 years doing that. And then I switched back. So, that and so many people have this story where if they had that grounding, that love of nature as childhood, they will come back to it. And that certainly happened with me. Yeah. And so many people have done that. I mean, I met a lot of people when I was doing my countryside management training, when I was getting my qualifications for this, that were like me, a kind of same kind of age, and said, I'm working in this, but I want to change. I want to work with the land. And there's so many people that are on that journey to getting a stronger nature connection and rediscovering that they really love and have a passion for. And that's fantastic, And
I found it really interesting during lockdown. Children have missed out on their relationship with their grandparents. And what we found, we very often run forest school sessions for the National Trust to just marshmallows, very, very basic. And the National Trust would advertise us and people would come and that had enough time on their hands to be able to teach the children all about the trees, the flowers and all that. Parents were just too busy. Whereas lockdown removed that, and the parents had to then take the responsibility, and actually found, I think, that they really enjoyed it. I think one of the most Googled things during first lockdown was how to make dandelion honey. Yeah. Or something. It went up 300% the amount it got Googled. And people were making dandelion flower cookies and all sorts.
Wild garlic was huge.
Wild garlic was one of the
along
most
with
Googled.
Crocheting and knitting and all kinds of arts and crafts. So it's great to see that happening.
Yeah, for me, it was always about the grandparents were doing that with the children, but it's been the parents, and that's been really, really precious, I think, for so many families.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think that you're definitely right, that there is a kind of in fact, Lewis, you were talking about your granddad being the kind of nature connection in your childhood, weren't you, the other day? And I was talking to my mum yesterday, and she was saying how she was having to teach my niece, and took her out for a walk the other day, and was just oh, you don't know any of the signs of spring. Oh my goodness, how do you not know this? I need to I'll give you 5p, she said to my niece. So every sign of spring you can spot, and was trying to teach her the names of lesser celandines and things. And I guess, that you could, maybe lockdown and our relationship with nature will change over time, hopefully, like you're describing. But historically, that kind of knowledge of nature and that connection is kind of diminishing generation after generation. So the grandparents have been the kind of the guardians of that knowledge almost, and passing it on to the children, which I'd never really thought about before. But I think you're absolutely right.
But I think the tide has changed because of pandemic. I think has probably accelerated this. I think we were always going to end up getting more connected with nature. I mean, it started, of course, with the climate change and what's the girl's name?
Greta Thunberg.
Greta Thunberg, of course. Sorry, and David Attenborough putting it out to the world. Come on, we need to make a change, and Extinction Rebellion and all that. And it was kind of it got some movement there, but then the pandemic, and I think it's all just come at the right time. And I'm very excited and almost anticipating this new love of nature and the want to protect it. But I'm also very fearful that people are just going to go back to their old ways and forget that love and that new connection. So we're sort of on that edge, aren't we? And it's up to people like us to keep pushing people and say, no, never forget. Let's move forward, positive, and with the world.
Yeah. Talking kind of climate change and things like that, I wondered if you guys had noticed any patterns on your local patch, in terms of where things grow and how much there is of certain plants, whether you've noticed any kind of changes year on year or in your local patch. My mum was saying yesterday that this year, where she is in Dorset, that there are hardly any primroses this year, and she doesn't know whether that's just because of the weather conditions in the year we've just had that's kind of damaged their population in some way, or this is an ongoing downward trend, or and even patterns that aren't necessarily to do with climate change, like maybe kind of every 2 years, like the apple trees in my garden, for example, they really give lots of fruit every 2 years for some reason. I don't know what that is. Have you guys noticed any kind of changes year on year in your local patch?
We've moved every 2 years for the last 6 years, so it's a difficult one to answer.
I think it'd be difficult to attribute anything we've seen specifically to climate change, because that's such a big, long, slow change. But like any kind of outdoor activity, whether you're bird watching, tracking, forest school, foraging, the more time you spend in nature, the more you start to recognise maybe some patterns, or just if something is earlier than last year, or something is more abundant than last year or not. And that's something that hopefully let's do a podcast in 30 years time and I can give you an even better answer and say, hey, there's 30 years now behind this, and here's some patterns I've noticed. But one thing I've noticed, for instance, is the birch sap is rising right now. So as we record this, it's 24th of February, to peek behind the curtain, and the birch sap is just rising. We've just had a really cold snap in February, and now suddenly it's away, certainly where we are anyway. And also one thing also is mast years, you might have heard about, with acorns and with beech. So a mast year, if you look at the kind of research, it seems to be a bit hazy. Every kind of 5 to 10 to 12 years, there is what's called a mast year, and suddenly you get a lot of the beech nuts and acorn just coming off the tree and falling on the ground. And those of us that work in the woods hopefully will really notice when that happens, because I'll see it laden on the tree and on the ground below, and you can get all the beech nuts and all the acorns as well. But this last year I noticed was really great for acorns, but really poor for beech where we were. So I hardly foraged any beech nuts at all last year, whereas the previous year I managed to get quite a lot.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of patterns I'm going to try and start looking at over time and see what's going on, and try and get used to that. But that's all part of the journey, isn't it? Of learning that.
That's the answer. It comes after a lifetime of observation, I think.
I was reading, I was listening to, I don't know if you guys have seen the book Braiding Sweetgrass that's come out quite recently, which is,
I've got it next to my bed. I've not started it.
It's incredible. It's on our list to podcast about, but it's such a, if you've got it on your bed, it's an enormous thing to try and get through, and it's very dense. But there's a bit in there talking about Lots of it's about kind of symbiosis and, you know, things living in harmony rather than constant taking and the honorable harvest and things. And there's a bit about mast years and saying that how closely they are linked. So the book is quite American centered, but how they're linked to sort of generational cycles between the animals that eat those beech nuts and acorns, and that, you know, so keeps them under control. So they have this big boom, and then the squirrel population goes up, but then they go, okay, we've got to thin them out. So they essentially starve the squirrels back down, and then they have this big year to try and get their acorns up, and then the squirrels go, brilliant, I'm going to have loads of kids. And so then the trees go, right, we can scale back, and pigs, and and wild pigs. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, you've spurred me on to.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, that's the more research that's done, just like, you know, at the hidden world of trees, you know, with all the mycelium underground, the more research is done, like what you're talking about there, it just shows how we are just beginning to maybe scratch the surface of understanding how connected nature actually is as a system. And, you know, if what you're saying there has real credence to it, and, you know, the research has been done, that's pretty amazing that those relationships exist.
So you were talking about the relationship between jade, hawthorn and oak, how is they've got a symbiotic threesome relationship.
I can't remember the bit about hawthorn now. You put me on the spot.
I know about jades and oaks.
Right. No, I was going to say.
But the hawthorn was to protect the tiny saplings. It's got the thorny barrier that protects the saplings coming up.
It's like a hedgerow three sisters then, with the beans and the cork and the squash. It's that kind of thing then, isn't it?
That's it. And there's this three-way sort of relationship. I think it was on a veteran tree course you did.
One for your listeners to Google.
It's fascinating.
That's amazing. You guys are both. People can't see because they won't see the video, but you've both just immediately lit up at like. There's something about forest school leaders about there being an exciting, weird nature phenomenon, and we all just go, yes, and this thing, and you know that, and just get way too animated, and that's when normal people start to back away. And
well, that's one of the nicest things we teach people who are training to be forest school. Either people who are trained, but they wanted to build their confidence, or their teachers who want to build their confidence in working outdoors. I love that moment where I say to them, guess what? You don't need to know anything. You just need to love nature and you will be brilliant. The enthusiasm will carry you through every single group, and every question that the kids can ask, just say, I don't know. Shall we find out? That's the best answer you can give kids.
Yeah, it really is. I was going to ask if you guys have got any, like a key memory that sticks out in your head in terms of being like a real awe and wonder moment, not for a group, but for you guys. Like, I never thought I would find, we were talking to the fungi guy a while ago, and he said he'd spent 6 years looking for death caps and he had to go to Wales to find them. I wondered if you guys had anything that you were like, I'd been foraging for this for ages, or this had been on my list to go and see, and it was just a real kind of, that's a big question.
It is. That might take a bit of thought. You know, as soon as we finish this podcast, I'll think of a really good one. I think, the sit spot. I enjoy my sit spot. Was so amazing. It was a bushcraft and wellbeing weekend we did in Derbyshire with Dave Watson, and we were doing a sit spot in the woods, and it was 30 minutes that I had to be really still for, and I was actually getting a bit frustrated and a little bit bored, you know, I'm going to admit that. And all of a sudden, I was about to stand up and go back to camp, and this little mouse, he was about an inch from my foot, popped his head up out of the ground. I looked about, completely didn't see me or was not aware of me. And he ran along this branch, inches from my foot, and went down a hole. And then up came another, well, I don't know if it was the same mouse or a different mouse, but potentially three came up out of this hole. I went down another hole, and they were so close to me. And it was such a wonderful moment and a good demonstration of patience. It might not have been a foraging experience, but that's certainly what's popped into my mind, a real special moment.
An awe and wonder moment for sure.
I think a wow moment and a kind of revelation of the possibilities moment of my journey would be a few years back when I did fire by friction for the first time on my own, during my formal bushcraft training. Because fire by friction, rubbing two sticks together, as kids will always say, you know, that's usually about as far as I know.
Normally wet sticks they pick up, but it's so
yeah,
much to go. I've got these.
But yeah, it's that realization and that opening up of the mind and the possibilities when you achieve something like that, whether it would be like doing that fire by friction or finding that mushroom you're looking for. But with the friction firelighting, it was just, oh, okay, this is actually achievable and I understand it and I can do this. Okay, now this opens up a whole world of things we could potentially teach or things I want to know, because you achieve one level of something and then suddenly a whole load of new questions come out of the box, and that uses you to go further. So I think reaching that point where I could do fire by friction for the first time on my own was a fantastic kind of game changer in terms of where we could go with things and opening up my enthusiasm even further to the possibilities and how we can then introduce the kids and adults that we work with. And that's a moment that really stands out, a proud moment of doing that. I think anyone who's achieved that would say, yeah, the first time I made my own fire from friction, that stands out for sure.
I've just thought of another good one, and it's a brilliant demonstration to all potential forest school leaders and outdoor educators of not knowing the answer. We were pond dipping with a group of kids, and there's a lovely lad that used to come on all of our sessions, and we found an oak leaf, and he picked it up. He said, "Look at this!" And there was this perfect circle cut out of the oak leaf. We were absolutely gobsmacked because it looked like someone had got a giant hole punch. It was that perfect, the circle was. And it blew my mind. I was like, why has somebody come into the woods, cut a perfect circle out of an oak leaf and then left it here? It was all wet, but it was just incredible. And it really puzzled us, but we took photos of it. And then it was probably nearly a year later, I was watching Spring Watch, and there was a lady talking about wildlife gardening, and she talked about the leaf cutter bee, and she showed a picture of a leaf cut out by a bee, and she said how perfect, and I mean perfect, the circle is that they cut out of the leaf. And I immediately went onto Facebook. I found the mother of this child. I said, "You've got to get him to watch this. I'm not going to tell you why." And she wrote back, she says, "Was it the leaf cutter bee?" And it was brilliant. So there you go. You don't need to know the answer, and kids really appreciate that. I think that sense of discovery.
Support the podcast today by becoming a Patreon member at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
I love a natural mystery. I absolutely love it. Those kind of things that when you're really in tune and you're noticing things and you're like, but what? But why? Why is that there?
I love
amazing.
how toddlers think that a lot of insects are dinosaurs. And we're like, maybe it is.
And it's very satisfying as a teacher when kids have got to the point where they want to join you on that mystery and they're enthused about it as much as you are, and you're not just playing up to it to try and get them enthused, but their enthusiasm's coming from them, and that's very satisfying. And it's great when a kid gets to that point. That's
why we do what we do, isn't it? Let's face it.
I was wondering then, that kind of leads on to so we have, I would say it's a conversation that Gemma and I have every couple of months, where we talk about either with our groups or with similarly like leaders that we're training, the pros and cons of like foraging ID apps and these things. So we had some recently where some students that came to us and they had apps that I hadn't seen before, and they were, I don't want to say scarily accurate, because that kind of makes it sound like I'm already against them, but they were so accurate just from a photo of a half taken photo on the move. And I wondered how you guys thought about those apps in terms of, are they beneficial to foraging to get people in? Are they a bit of a risk because people aren't, like say, engaging with all their senses? How do you find them?
Don't use them. Basically.
I really need to start looking at apps, because I don't use them. And it, like you mentioned, that's a really good example. They come up again and again. And when we've run the last couple of foraging courses we've done, people have been looking at the phone and going, "Oh, look, it is this thing that you're talking about." So we really need to spend some time with them, because I'm very much a kind of a first-hand experience and book person.
Did that feel like an undercut when someone held up their phone and went, "Oh yeah, you do know what you're talking about"?
Yeah.
Like,
But yeah, it's interesting with that. They're not going away, are they? So I think as teachers, we need to kind of understand them and hopefully be in a position to recommend one and go, well, this is pretty good. But how much is that app telling you? So I think if you have experience, let's say like foraging, for instance, look at a plant that you think is dodgy. Look at something like the cow parsley. How much is it going to tell you the difference between that and your hemlocks that you need to avoid? Is it going to tell you? Is it going to flag it up? Because then for someone who doesn't have the knowledge to spot the warning signs that maybe the app doesn't point out, they're not going to see them. So I would, as a teacher, want to spend some time road testing some species that could be easily confused for more dangerous stuff. That's how I would kind of want to test it and see, okay, how far can you push this app? Let's see how good it actually is. And is it 100% accurate all the time? Only time will tell. I think, is it right that, the more data they put into these, the better they get?
I would imagine so. But
but it relies on the user to confirm the ID. So it kind of, you take the photo and it searches its library and it goes, how about these 3 suggestions? Which one do you think? Confirm this. And so if that user has then double checked it against a couple of other ID guides and gone, yes, you're correct, then it's going to be, more effective, isn't it? But if you're just going, yeah, guess it is, confirm, then you're kind of you're adding to that library, but you're not necessarily right. I think there's one thing that I found with the apps is that when I've been using them with groups, and a couple of people that I was with misidentified an old bit of foxglove where all the flowers had fallen off. With this app, they were like, oh, it's clary sage. Oh, great, that's a herb, isn't it? That's going to smell really nice. Imagine that.
James and Lea both wrinkled their faces. You can't see it, but they both just like wins.
Yeah. And so I was kind of like, okay, how do I handle this in a way that's not going to like shout at them and get them to reach their own conclusion about how effective or how safe this app might be.
So we made them eat it.
So I was kind of just like probing and I was kind of probing them on like, what kind of like information is your app giving you about like habitat for this plant? Oh, none. What kind of information is this app giving you about like the time of year? None. And so, okay, let's have a look at this in a book, which is going to give you, found on, clary sage found in this habitat, which is not where we are at all. It's like the opposite of where we are, and all this kind of thing. So I, for one, found that the kind of most scary thing about the app, that unlike a book, it didn't give you all of that stuff. It was purely
what you've hit on there is something that comes with experience, which is the kind of the art of tuning in to zoning into your environment, and that can't do that.
Yet.
The more you practice, whether it's tree ID or foraging or wildflower ID, the more you start to, as you enter a habitat, you start to make a mental picture in your head. Oh, these are the things that I'm probably going to see here because I'm looking at this kind of habitat, and you zone into it, you slow down, take your time. You can have this argument between books and apps, but how personal is the app experience of, how much are you actually having a personal experience with the plant there and getting to know it, or you just, it just feeds, my concern is slightly feeds into the very quick, I've got a picture of it, I know that plant.
You
That's
don't
it.
learn.
But have you actually spent time, okay, what does it feel like? What does the plant smell like? Or are you just taking a photograph and saying, oh, it's that?
It's not going into your working memory, is it?
Yeah. Like any tool, it depends how you use it. Yeah. So if you use it as a supplement to your aid, I think it could be very useful. And again, I need to go and practice with some. But as a one-stop shop, I would be cautious.
And luckily, we work in woodlands in Wales where you don't get a signal. So,
yeah. So there's an advantage.
Yeah. So yeah, but you're right. You don't learn anything. Yeah. It's too quick and instant an answer. So you're not actually building a relationship with the plant. So we may one day road test some apps, but I don't want to, and I probably won't, because then I can't. Yeah, no, don't want to.
Well, an app and a book can't replace a teacher, because there's an experience there, and a teacher can answer questions. You've got a specific question about something that an app can't answer, and the teacher can go, oh, okay, well, there's this or that, or it might look like this instead sometimes, and you can't beat that, a personal experience with a teacher whether that's a family member or in a physical capacity.
It's like so many things about forest school, isn't it? That like there's not really a way to shortcut experience and time. Lots of the skills that you build up at forest school, like friction firelighting or foraging, they're not things that you can necessarily go, I have done a 1 day 6 hour course and I am now an expert. You go, I've done a 1 day course, now I've got to go and practice it for the next 3 years and probably go on some other courses, and I've got to keep paying James and Lee for more information. I've got to keep going back. No, I'm joking. But it's that thing, isn't it? And that's, I think, one of the things that we talk a lot about, the kind of linear progression that state schooling has, of like, you learn this and then you build on it tomorrow and then you build on it tomorrow. And there's not a lot of thought or time given to consolidating and kind of just going over things you've already done and just sort of not rehashing, but going, let's just revisit that because it's ever so slightly different in this woodland, or the plant's ever so slightly different when it's been raining, and just revisiting those things over and over again. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is how we can balance fostering independent foraging that children want to do, because lots of forest school is about that autonomy and being able to go off on their own, but obviously balancing it against the risks. And it's that thing, isn't it, I guess, of you've just got to put the time in at a certain point to go, you've got to work with the kids and go, okay, maybe you let them identify it. Would that be fair? You go, let them ID it 1 week, and then the next week you don't tell them where it is, but you say, can you spot it? Do you have any tips or little sort of tricks to help kids get to that independent point?
Yeah, I think that's it. It may just be the first lesson, maybe simply, hey, did you know you can eat some wild plants? And they're just cooking up some stuff, and maybe there's none of the ID involved. But you're looking at, but then after that, you're going to, okay, let's find the plant. But as you said, you could have a bit of a game with it. Let's, do a bit of a blindfold trick or something and put them somewhere else in the woods. Can they find this plant now from a different angle, so they're not just following a trail? All that kind of stuff. Can they find the plant by smell? So maybe you could do a thing, let's say wild garlic, for instance, and you get 3 or 4 different leaves that maybe feel a little bit similar. Blindfold the kids in which one is garlic and really get that smell in their head. You could play with that. Or touch. Can you tell the touch between the foxglove leaf, the really furry stuff, and other leaves potentially? Maybe something less poisonous. You understand. Maybe engaging the senses there.
It's triangulating, isn't it? That's what good foraging is going, I've got information about habitat and time of year and smell and, and all those points, like on a map, they lead you to, it's probably here, but I only know it by, like astronomy or something.
That's true.
And it's the same with my own personal journey of foraging. I learn a plant 1 year. If I don't relearn it again the following year, I will forget. It's the 3rd year where I really know that plant. Where at the same time, the following year, I will relearn it and go, okay, yeah, I've got it. And the 3rd year, I feel like I really know it. And we were lucky enough to run an after-school club where kids came back time and time again. We don't do it anymore, but we had kids that stayed with us, didn't we, for 1-2 years. And some of them would tell their parents, this is feedback, oh, look, Mum, there's wild garlic. And they'd be like, yeah, whatever. And he'd go, honestly, Mum, that's wild garlic. And he'd pick it and they'd smell it. And she'd go, oh, he was right. And this kid, he was quite autistic, and he was, she didn't believe him, bless him. He was frustrated.
He was right, though.
He was bang on. And it's that revisiting the following year is so important. And what we did, in our forest school area, we would have tiny little fences built around the patches of wild garlic to protect them. And it just meant, I don't know, it was about building a relationship with the plant, wasn't it? So that was one trick.
There's a language trick as well that teachers can use. And this is something I got from the Art of Mentoring, the Wilderness Awareness School. And they talk about how to, as a teacher, we should be using the correct language, where we're always perhaps dropping in the names of plants all the time. So rather than saying, hey, kids, we're going to go run over to that tree there, say, we're going to go run over to that beach. And it's just putting that name in their mind all the time. Or, oh, look, that patch of wild garlic's going to be coming up in a month or so. Oh, the garlic's gone over now. You're just talking about it, and it's in their conversational time. Same with directions. Say, oh, we're going to go north, instead of saying we're going over there. And you're just starting to get into their head that kind of language, and they're noticing it all the time, because kids will soak it in, like, oh, it's that wild garlic patch again, rather than just saying, oh, we're passing through here, or so name dropping trees and plants that and you're using that in your sessions all the time, so they'll just soak it in and they will copy you and they'll start to use that language as well. So it's a simple trick you can do, but it gets them thinking about those plants and trees.
That fencing idea is really interesting. I was just, as you were saying about fencing it off to kind of protect it, and I was wondering whether there's something that differentiates the sort of magic of foraging from farming, in quotes, in that you can't force it. You can't force wild garlic really to appear, and you can't necessarily force it to stay longer than it, you have to find it and go, it's all fleeting and ethereal. And how does that feed into that awe and wonder cycle?
It's a treasure hunt, isn't it? Foraging, it's the ultimate treasure hunt, because it's treasure you can eat. So for kids, that's the best type, isn't it? And when a child has got to that stage where you've asked them to hunt for a plant and they find it, that's just an amazing kind of revelation for them. Maybe their fire by friction moment, where they go, I found this plant and I was right, and then we cooked it and it was amazing. So that's where we want to get to.
When they get it, that first time they light that bit of cotton wool, or they find a plant, or they've treated the nettle sting with some plantain, and they've done it for themselves, they will never forget that. That is an experience they will never
Then you have
forget.
to immediately calm it back down, because they go, I know where the wild garlic is. I've picked all of it. You go, whoa.
Yeah. Luckily, where we were, it's like a carpet.
Wow.
It's on a national trust property, and it is in abundance everywhere. It's crazy how much wild garlic there is.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of dog walkers, so...
Are there any kind of, you talked about birch sap coming up at the moment. Are there any kind of more unusual wild greens that you've been picking at the moment?
One of my new favourites, which is looking really good now, is one that sounds really awful. It's called the hairy bittercress.
Yeah.
And
yes, I discovered that this summer, this spring too. It's great.
It's great. I mean, it's one I've known about, but not really ever appreciated properly before. And I think I've been eating it more later in the year when it's gone a little bit tougher. But now it's really nice and cressy, true to its name. Nice and peppery, good taste to it. Use it just like you would cress at home. And it's in abundance, and it's in most people's gardens, especially if you're a very relaxed gardener. You'll find a lot of it. Same with the ground elder as well. That's another good one when it's young. But hairy bittercress is good because it's one you can't really confuse with too much else once you get to know it. And we covered this in our latest February wild food workshop, what to forage that month. But it's a good one. It's very abundant, extremely common. And as you said, as you discovered, Gemma, it's good eating. It's a good one, and it's one that's out now, whereas we're kind of waiting maybe another month or a few weeks for the other stuff to come out, like your wild garlics and nettles. But hairy bittercress is having its moment in the sun.
My favourite is, and I've been able to find it all through winter, every time there's a warm spell, is cleavers or goosegrass or sticky willy, whatever you want to call it.
Khaki monkey in Wales.
Khaki monkey in Wales, which is fab. But of course, kids know it. It's easily identifiable because it'll stick to their clothes. Badge of the woods is another name because it will stick like a badge to them. But if you put that in a jug of water in your fridge overnight and then sieve it and drink the water, it's a beautiful flavoured water which is excellent for cleansing the system of toxins. So that's a really good one as well for kids because it's really easy to identify.
That's another one that's always near dog walkers, I find. Fine for sticking on, but it's often at that kind of side of a pavement kind of...
It is. You have to sort of scramble past some of the bramble to get the good stuff that hasn't been peed on. But
you send the kids into the bramble.
Send the kids.
Why are you
no, we only have to go and rescue them then.
That's true.
I think that's one of those things, isn't it? There's a, I would say for lots of children, there's this perception of sort of late spring. They know blackberries, they know apples start to grow, they know, the sort of commonly known things. And you might think that that's the only foraging period, which is definitely the peak of it is through the summer and stuff. It's when sort of food for free becomes very easy, and it's kind of just, I guess you guys are, would you say you're not in the business of, but you're kind of working to show people that you can forage all year round? Is that something you're trying to work towards?
Yeah, for sure. There's good stuff to be had. Of course, there's the peak seasons, and we're just about to get into one of the best seasons now. And then the other big one is the autumn, so September, October time for all your fruits and nuts and berries and fungi, of course. But there is stuff to be had all year. Yeah, there's less in December, January, February, but there's some little specialists which are really worth knowing about.
And the beautiful thing is when you start to get deeper into your whole journey of nature connection, you start to realize that what the body needs is what nature is growing at that time. Wow. So your high sugary foods and your nuts, high fats come out just before winter hits. You store and you ingest all that high sort of energy food.
I haven't stopped doing that. That's
no. But the wild garlic and the nettles are coming up, so you can have your detox coming soon.
I suppose.
But that's it. I mean, all the bitters are coming up, and that's all about detoxing the body and cleansing it. And unfortunately, we eat all sorts of foods that are out of season, and we wonder why disease and sort of different cancers are prevalent, whereas never before. And we're not working with the land. We're not looking at what Mother Nature is doing and working with it. So when we find out what Mother Nature is doing and try and fit alongside it, we start to become much healthier. So yeah, it's fascinating stuff. It's really, really good, and people are clearly fascinated by this whole subject.
I have to ask. So lots of your videos, you've got your son with you, baby wearing in quite a lot of them. Will foraging be immediately part of his world? What happens if he likes Oreos instead?
He's never going to have them. No. He'll never know what McDonald's tastes like, that's for sure.
He's had some wild garlic.
Yeah. Oh,
that was a look between parents of, you've given him what?
Yeah. We even gave him seaweed and peas for one of his first meals. I don't know what we were thinking. I was reading a book saying he needs iron. Where's that?
So we gave him some lava bread, which any listeners in Wales will know that one.
Delicious.
He loved it.
He loved it.
He loved it because he'd never had any other food before. So to him, it was amazing.
He looked at us so trustingly and thought, okay, well, they clearly think I should be eating this, so I will swallow it. But no, he prefers mashed potato with cheese.
No, but yeah, to answer your question, in terms of foraging, yes, it will be a part of his upbringing because as parents, we all know that if we want a kid to be inspired in something, we have to do it. We have to live it. We can't just say, you should be doing this. We need to do it ourselves. If you want your kid to learn an instrument, you need to be sat there playing an instrument and playing stuff or singing, and they'll become part of their evening, part of their life. It just happens. If you want to be into wild food, you need to come out on walks and say, we'll just munch in on this, or we'll throw in this in the dinner tonight. And it just becomes part of what he does. So yeah, it will be hopefully a part of his upbringing. And maybe, again, like us, he'll forget it in his 20s, but come back to it later on in life. Who knows? But that grounding, hopefully, will be there. Or maybe he'll like football. Who knows?
No.
Hopefully not.
You can like football and foraging. You can be playing football and just have a little.
He could start the first puffball league.
He can be.
That's it.
Yeah.
Instead of oranges at home.
Yeah, he lets all the goals in because he's kneeling down looking at some hairy bitter crest.
I didn't want to stop the spores. The spores were going, and I thought I'd just let it carry on.
That's it. Yeah.
Be very proud of him, actually. If he did
I would. Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm very conscious of not taking up too much of your time. Is there anything you want to sort of give to people to go, if there's one thing they need to take away about foraging, this is what you kind of try and impart to people, or that's kind of thing you want people to know that we haven't asked you?
I would say, there's always the forager's prayer. We've touched on that, which is, if in doubt, leave it out, so just err on the side of caution. It's not a quick fix foraging. Take your time with it and enjoy it. It's not about, have I ticked off these plants, today. It's about enjoying the walk and the time outside, and those rewards will come. Slow down, take your time and enjoy it.
Having a journal is a really good one. Writing down your recipes, writing down where you found things. Our latest post on our Patreon page has been about the forager's map, drawing on an OS map where you find your wild garlic and things, and just practice. You don't need to go out and practice mindfulness, but what you're doing is being very mindful.
It is. Yeah, very much so. It's a slow down mindset, just like tracking.
there's
Foraging is very much the same kind of mindset. And the other thing is, just in terms of sustainability, really, because some people worry, is foraging an issue for having a real negative impact on wildlife, and I don't believe it is. You do hear horror stories of, London restaurants that have gone out and just sent people to gather every mushroom in a forest, bring it back, and they'll get ID'd later. That's bad practice, and that's not something that we want to be encouraging at all. But in terms of somebody who cares and somebody who's genuinely interested in foraging, they're only going to increase their love of nature, and they're going to be mindful. In terms of sustainability, I have a rule of 5 that I like to use when picking. So I say if there's 5 of something, I can take 1. So that means there's 1 for pollination or to go to seed. There's 1 that might get eaten by wildlife because they like wild food too. 1 that might get trampled because that's going to happen. So 1 that can get destroyed if that happens. 1 just to enjoy, for others to enjoy that plant as well, if it's a wildflower, for instance. And then there's 1 for the pot. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but using that rule of 5 puts you in the right mindset for what you want to be foraging. And yeah.
That's really nice. And where can people find out more about your guys' stuff and your courses and things?
So we're Woodland Classroom, and we're based up in North East Wales in Wrexham. And we run our courses on a couple of National Trust properties, which is awesome. So there's beautiful ancient woods there. But it's woodlandclassroom.com is the website. And you'll find lots of stuff on there. And now the lockdown's going to be eased, we're going to start putting a bunch of courses on there, hopefully in the next few weeks for later in the year. We'll get onto that. But there's a couple of online things that anyone can access, whether it's live workshops or whether it's stuff that's been pre-recorded and put out there as online learning. So we have, with our foraging workshops, we're doing those every month at the minute. The next one is 18th of March. And we have special guest speakers on those from the world of foraging and bushcraft and nature connection. So that's all on woodlandclassroom.com. People can come on those, and it's an hour where we just talk about the best of wild food and share pictures and recipes. It's always good fun, and there's quite a good community of people there. But the other big one is the tree identification course I've created, which is called the Complete Tree ID course. And that's been the kind of child of lockdown, really. And with that, it's all the British native trees in all 4 seasons, and it's all taught through video courses with me out on site, showing the students about those trees. And you can find that on the website, or you can email us at hey@Woodland Classroom. And we said we would do a little a discount on the big course for any Forest School podcast listeners. So we will give you a discount code. If you use the code Forest School Pod, you will get 10% off on the Complete Tree ID course. But if you don't want to spend a penny, we have a free introductory tree ID course called Kickstart Your Tree ID Skills. It's totally free. And if you like that and enjoy that, and I never hear from you again, that's fine. Enjoy the course. But if you like that and you wanted to take it further, then there's much more of the rabbit hole you can go down.
And just the Patreon, we've built up a bit of a community of followers, lots of Forest School leaders. For the price of a cup of coffee a month, you can join us on Patreon. It's a bit like subscribing to a Nature Connection online magazine. We put lots of posts up about recipes. You get a discount on all our webinars.
We do a live Q&A with everybody every month. And
when do you sleep? You've got a child. What do you do?
No, well, he's very patient. He's a very patient little sausage. He's lovely. So yeah, it's hard going. But I think at the beginning of lockdown, we were a little bit frightened about how we were going to pay our mortgage, and the baby came, and we just, I don't know, hit the ground running. But we've both been at home. We've been really present with him, as well as building all this stuff. So it's been whirlwind.
And as you said, Gemma, you might see him appear on a few videos here or there. So he is around and about for sure.
Amazing.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much, guys. It was a real pleasure to speak to you. Thanks for giving your time.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you ever so much for inviting us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
If you like this podcast and want to support more episodes, you can donate through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Children of the Forest to show your support for the Forest School podcast.